Welcome applicants. Today I'm experimenting with a new presentation format. Hope everything goes well. So with that, we'll start with question 3 of the October 2019 Baby Bar. Beginning with our call to question. What tort claims, if any, can Maryland reasonably assert against Ken? What defenses, if any, can Ken reasonably assert? And what is the likely result? Discuss. Call number 2. What tort claims, if any, can Ken reasonably assert against Maryland? What defenses, if any, can Maryland reasonably assert? And what is the likely result? Discuss. Right here we know that we're going to be most likely in the area of tort law. Well, what was the clear giveaway? Let's highlight these things right here. Tort claims. Absolutely. And with that, we should put down our shopping list, capital letters, so we can easily get through all of our shopping list in efficient time. Okay. So we have intentional torts, negligence, strict liability, products liability, other torts, and third-party issues. Now, if you have your own checklist and you have your own shopping list, absolutely be my guest. Put this down here at this point. Make sure to do it though in as quick and efficient manner as possible. Okay. With that, now let's address the first call. This would be Maryland, like the slide above says. It's going to be Maryland v. Ken. And we want to make sure that we're labeling this too like a 1 and 2 format so that our reader knows exactly what we're answering in terms of which call, goes with which party orientation. Now we're going to be doing Ken v. Maryland. Okay, excellent. So now we have all of our party v. party orientation. Going back up now into our question, let's read the facts. Ken was determined to establish the best dog breeding facility in the country. He searched for an appropriate spot to locate such a major facility and found a large tract of land far beyond the reaches of the city. He hired the best veterinarians to staff the facility, and it soon became known for producing the most desirable puppies in the country. The dogs do make a lot of noise and create a certain amount of stench, particularly due to their excrement that litters the land. Ken's business now employs 100 people full-time, although no one is assigned to remove the dog waste. Maryland owns 10 Norwegian forest cats. Since the city restricts the number of pets that residents can own, she decided to build a home outside city limits. In the time since Ken built his facility, the suburbs expanded outwards towards his property. Maryland found a perfect lot to Ken's property, large enough for her cats to roam, and build her house there. The house contains special features for cats such as catwalks near the ceilings. Shortly after moving in, Maryland began having problems. Her cats developed nervous disorders due to the constant barking of Ken's dogs. In addition, Maryland found the noxious smell from the accumulated dog droppings and associated swarms of flies hard to tolerate. When Maryland's complaints to Ken failed to resolve matters, she independently tried several measures to create a buffer zone at the edge of Ken's property that abuts her land. Whenever one of Ken's dogs gets close to Ken's wire fence, Maryland sprays it with water from her hose to get it back up to get it to back up and be quiet. She also uses the water stream to move the piles of excrement away from the fence. One time she also sprayed air freshener on the dogs through the fence, and unfortunately 2 of the dogs died as a result. So now, taking a look at this, we should now come down to our shopping list. Keep our shopping list in mind. Now, when we come back up to our facts and start issue spotting. Now, Ken was determined to establish the best dog breeding facility in the country. Sounds to me like still background facts at this point. He searched for an appropriate spot to locate such a major facility and found a large tract of land far beyond the reaches of the city. Might be support for something, but we just don't know quite yet what that something is. He hired the best veterinarians to staff the facility. Still support, and it soon became known for producing the most desirable puppies in the country. The dogs do make a lot of noise and create a certain amount of stench, particularly due to their excrement that litters the land. Making a special note here, right here, I want to make a special note of that, and I also want to make a special note of the fact that he hired the best veterinarians, and it soon became known for producing the most desirable puppies in the country. Okay. Now, down here, Ken's business now employs 100 people. Want to make sure 100 people full-time that this is highlighted. Although no one is assigned to remove the dog waste. So no one is assigned to remove the dog waste. So all these facts here that we've been spotting raise what Maryland might bring against Ken, and that would be what? Possibly nuisance. But we haven't read all the facts yet, so let's make sure we read all the facts. Maryland owns 10 Norwegian forest cats. Since the city restricts the number of pets that residents can own, she decided to build a home outside city limits. In time, since Ken built his facility, the suburb expanded outwards toward his property. Maryland found a perfect lot next to Ken's property. Right here. Highlight that fact. Large enough for her cats to roam and build her house there. The house contains special features for cats, such as catwalks near the ceilings. Shortly after moving in, Maryland began having problems. Okay, Maryland began having problems here, right here. Her cat developed nervous disorders due to the constant barking of Ken's dogs. In addition, Maryland found the noxious smell from the accumulated dog droppings and associated swarms of flies hard to tolerate. Making sure we make mention of this, bring this to our attention. When Maryland's complaints to Ken failed to resolve matters, she independently tried. So Maryland's complaints to Ken failed to resolve matters. Okay. She independently tried several measures to create a buffer zone at the edge of Ken's property that abuts her land. Whenever one of Ken's dogs gets too close to whenever Ken's dogs gets too close to Ken's wire fence, Maryland sprays it with water from her hose to get it to back up and be quiet. So we got this aspect of Maryland spraying water from her hose to get Ken's dogs to back up and be quiet. She also uses the water stream to move the piles of excrement away from the fence. This is a whole nother tort that we're going to be talking about here later on when Ken when we look at the Ken v. Maryland situations. One time she also sprayed air freshener on the dogs through the fence, and unfortunately 2 of the dogs died. This one here, I want to make sure to note this. This is a very full fact pattern for issue spotting. So let's take a look here. Going first into our first issue, we should be seeing private nuisance. Why? Why would that be? Because let's come down here and note it in our Ken v. Maryland sitch. Let's take a look here. Private nuisance. Well, private nuisance has the elements of, let's see here. Let's write this out so that we can simulate this as close as possible. Private nuisance is when the defendant causes, how about this? Is when the defendant's conduct substantially and unreasonably interferes with the plaintiff's use and enjoyment of their land. Here we want to make sure to bring to our readers' attention, there we go, right here, that we're going to be talking about substantial interference. So substantial interference we also want to be bringing to our readers' attention that there's unreasonable interference. And we want to make sure that we're going to talk about a risk versus utility, risk of harm versus utility of the activity that's causing the interference. And then we want to make sure to entertain defenses. At this, actually, the defenses would probably come right after our second kind of nuisance, and that would be a public nuisance. Public nuisance, the elements required for public nuisance are public nuisance is when the defendant's course of conduct interferes with the public's use and enjoyment of their land through of the other land, period. The plaintiff must prove that their harm is different in kind than that suffered by the community. In order to prevail, comma, the plaintiff must prove that their harm is different in kind than that. Oh, let's see here. Okay. Than that suffered by the community. Okay. Now, our defenses to nuisance would include defense to property. Well, actually, excuse me here. It would probably be coming to the nuisance. And also, I want to make sure we're staying on the public nuisance, coming to the nuisance. And then we want to make sure to talk about the remedy of injunction. Now, we also want to make sure to talk about negligence. And that would be pertaining to the special facts dealing with right here, that no one is assigned to remove the dog waste from Ken's business. Okay. Now after that, we would now switch gears and go into Ken v. Maryland. Ken v. Maryland, we're going to be taking a look at trespass to land. The intentional torts of trespass to land. The intentional torts of trespass to chattel. This would be through the water spraying. Okay. And then let's see, there we go. Conversion. Now I want to make a distinction here that there's actually two trespasses to chattel. This would be for the air freshener. Spraying the air freshener. And then we have conversion for spraying the air freshener. Okay. Now, moving on to the entertaining defenses, we would say defensive property. And then we would talk about self-help, abatement of nuisance. Okay. Okay. This point I'm going to switch now to complete writing. So I'm going to minimize that and bring this to fit this to our page just like so. I'm going to come up and we'll get started writing this thing. Okay, private nuisance. In our substantial interference, we're looking to see if the interference is greater, I should say this, that the substantial interference interferes with Maryland's use and enjoyment of her land. Let's go up and find whether or not the facts support this. Up here we have that Maryland is saying that when she found that perfect lot next to Ken's property, Maryland began having problems. So let's take a look here, and then we're going to spot this in our fact pattern. So we got substantial interference. We're going to bring down the facts. We're going to say that the substantial interference is an interference with the plaintiff's use and enjoyment of their land, or should say this, is a interference with the use. Okay, or how about this? Let me put it this way: substantial interference is an interference with plaintiff's use and enjoyment of land that a reasonable person in the community would consider obnoxious or intolerable. We'll say that. Okay, intolerable. Here, the facts state that Maryland, I'm going to say M here, go up here and make sure to M and K for Ken. Okay, the facts state that M, what? After finding a perfect lot next to Ken's property, began having problems. The facts state that shortly after found a perfect piece of land next to Ken's property, that, okay, let me repeat this. Here, the facts state that shortly after M found a perfect piece of land next to Ken's property, she began having problems. M will argue that what? Let's come up here and grab what fact we need. That what particular problem is she having? She found this here. This is the one I want to use. I'll see if I can put it in a different color here. Oh, there it is. Maryland found the noxious smell from the accumulated dog droppings and associated swarms of flies hard to tolerate. Maryland will argue that she found it hard to tolerate the, come up here and grab this, noxious smells okay, here it is. She found the noxious smells from the dog droppings and associated swarms of flies. Hard to tolerate. Kay will counter argue that M should have known that picking a piece of property next to a dog facility like his would have the accompanying risk of smell, odor, and possibly fly swarms. However, M will rebut this with the fact that I'll come up here and grab this. That let's see. Let's try to. We'll rebut this. We'll rebut. We'll counter argue. Let's try this here. That a reasonable person in her position would consider this intolerable in that she specifically she have found the noxious smells from dog dropping associated swarms of flies hard to tolerate. I want to argue one other thing here too about the sound. Also, M will argue that her cats have developed a nervous disorder due to the I believe it's constant dog barking from Ken's facility. Let me double check that real quick here. Constant dog barking of Ken's dogs. Yeah, constant dog barking from Ken's dogs. Okay, Ken will argue, okay, that M should have known that picking a piece of property next to a dog facility like this would have the accompanying risk of smell, odor, possibly fly swarms, and dog barking. However, M will argue that a reasonable person in her position would consider this intolerable in that she specifically chose this property. Go up here and grab another fact. She's up here. She found a perfect spot for one particular purpose. That she's large enough for her cats to roam and build her house there. The house contains special features for cats, such as catwalks near the ceilings. Now, let's see. Since the city also, there's a fact up here. Since the city restricts the number of pets that residents can own, she decided to build a home outside city limits. In time, since Ken built his facility, the suburbs expanded outwards towards his property. So, right here, that M will counter argue that a reasonable person in her position would consider this intolerable in that she specifically chose this property for her 10 Norwegian, I believe, Norwegian forest cats. and her to live. Okay. Thus, court will likely find that Ken has substantially interfered with M's use and enjoyment of her property. Unreasonable interference now. Under an unreasonable interference, the court will balance risk of harm to the plaintiff, use and enjoyment of their land against the utility that the interference provides to the community. Here, facts state that Ken back up here real quick, that Ken employs 10 people full-time, and let's see, what is it here? Okay, that, oh, would you break up the big paragraph? Okay, yeah, that's what we're looking at here under this one. You might that is a great point. We'll see how that looks here. Oh yeah, I think you could do that just like that. That's a great point. Very thank you for that. Now here we're going to look at the Ken dog facility. So we're going to look at here, the facts state that Ken found. Okay, first of all, there's a little list of factors here that we want to bring out. Right, argument, counter argument, exactly. Right here, we're going to say that the facts state that Ken desired to make the best dog facility in the country. Let's see, it was determined to establish the best dog breeding facility in the country. Where do you put the, oh, that would be at the tail end here, right? On this one here, that this would be our defenses, the coming to the nuisance. And we were going to get to that, okay, yeah, that would be what the fact that he was there actually before Marilyn got there, and that's why the facts state that she picked a property that was perfect for her next to Ken. That's how you would bring in that defense. Now, when you talk about the risk versus utility argument, you want to make sure to present both sides with as much weight so that you can make the best analysis application of the facts as possible. So here the facts state that Ken was determined to make the best dog facility in the country, and Ken chose the best veterinarians and let's see, and chose the best veterinarians. Let me come back up here and grab that fact. The best veterinarians to staff the facility. Let's see. Yes, employment. Exactly right. We're going to definitely get to that. And see, chose and hired, hired the best veterinarians to staff the facility. Veterinarians. I don't know my spelling on that. Excellent. Hired the best veterinarians to staff the facility. Also, Ken will argue that the dog facility provided a great benefit to the economics or economy of the community because it hired 100, I believe it's 100, let's see, people full time. Oh, actually, it employed 100 people full time. Yes, yes. Right down here. Because he hired and employed 100 people full time. However, M will argue that the benefit, or I should say this, the risk to her cats develop, well, let's see, how do you handle, that would be down here under negligence. That's a great point. Now, we're going to talk about that right now because that is a fantastic point. What you're going to say is that there's a duty that's owed and that he breached that duty, and also that you're going to be able to establish a duty that he owed. He should have staffed. He should have given his 100 staffed employees, or actually the 100 people that he employed full time, the task. Yes, no, yeah, exactly. He should have given them the task to go pick up the dog droppings that were developing over. This is what the facts say right here. Right here it says that he assigned no one to remove the dog waste. Because he didn't assign anybody, he breached his duty to Marilyn, who is his right across neighbor, his neighbor right there, and therefore, but for him not assigning anybody to remove the dog waste, the dog waste piled up. Is it foreseeable that dog waste that piles up could cause noxious smells and swarms of flies and make it hard to tolerate? Absolutely. However, there's a problem with this, that Marilyn didn't actually suffer a harm either personally or with her property. She just found it the smell noxious and hard to tolerate. Not only was there a smell that she couldn't handle, but that there were swarms of flies that came with the smell as well. But that wouldn't be enough to represent either a personal or property harm, and therefore there wouldn't be enough down here to represent the negligence claim. So it wouldn't be there. In other words, thus negligence would not be a viable claim for Maryland. Now, let's ask ourselves here, kind of going in reverse order here. Can Maryland say if she's able to prove both public and private nuisance, can she claim a remedy of injunction? Injunction, remember though, is requiring someone to do something or not to do something, and it's an equitable form of relief. Okay. Now, can she come up here? Come up here in the facts. Can she require that Ken cease his dog breeding facility? I don't see that. No, I don't see that. But can she may require Doug, exactly. Does Ken have a professional standard to maintain? Very good point. I see that. That's another way of establishing the duty under our negligence claim. Exactly right. He would. Why? Come up here and take a look. He has to he was determined to establish the best dog breeding facility in the country. Now he is not a professional. He is a he would be considered a reasonable, prudent person. Okay, a reasonable, prudent dog breeding facility owner. But I don't think he would have the same professional standard that maybe the best veterinarians that he staffed in the facility would. Hopefully you're understanding where I'm going with that. That it would be more of a reasonable, prudent person rather than a professional standard that would establish the duty. Yeah, and the duty that he breached. Now, to the injunctions, to talk about the injunction aspect, can he require, or can Maryland require him to cease being a dog breeding facility? No. But can't she require him to maybe uh, maybe put up a barrier of some sort so that there's no buildup of the dog waste, number one, and number two, that the noise, that a lot of noise that this is right here. This was another area I'm going to highlight with red. That there was a lot of noise and a certain amount of stench, particularly due to the excrement that litters the land. This absolutely, he should have assigned people to take care of that. So that's one thing he should do in terms of Maryland's remedy of injunction against him. Number two, that she could require him maybe to put up a health may out apply adhere to the safety standards, the health standards, and then put up maybe some kind of noise barrier, some kind of noise canceling technology of sorts that would be supplied on but between the properties, so that Maryland's Norwegian cats don't further get annoyed. Now right here, they talked about right here the nervous disorders that they developed because of the constant barking. So there's the noise aspect. Maybe a noise cancellation barrier of some sort would alleviate that. Now that deals with injunction. Here, yeah, where do you put the cat? Exactly, the cat issues would come into play. I think we've already talked about that up here under private nuisance. That her cats started developing a nervous disorder due to the constant dog barking from Ken's dogs. Exactly. Now you come up here and we want to make sure not to go too fast when we're talking about public nuisance, because we will be able to establish that even though Ken had made an excellent benefit to the community through 100 people being employed full time and staffing the best veterinarians in the facility, would Ken have to pay the vet bills for the cats? Very good point as well. That might come in under general and special damages. That's probably where I would throw that in here. General damages and special damages. Okay, and then Under the general damages, since these are non-economic, these would be things like the pain and suffering that Marilyn has gone through due to the noxious odor she's going through due to the fact that her cats are developing nervous disorders. Okay, but the economic remedies would be what about IIED? See that I don't see IIED for are we talking down here under Ken v. Maryland? So that would be what Ken would claim against Maryland. I don't see IIED here. And there's a reason. I don't think she. That's a great. You know what? There's a great argument I was going to say there. If you have time to put it in, I would err on the side of including it. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, this is what Ken's going to have to, in that instance, Ken's going to have to say that her, coming back up here to the facts again, that her spraying the dogs, well, first of all, her spraying the dogs with water from her hose to get the dogs to back up right here. Spraying the dogs with her hose to get the dogs to back up and be quiet. Would that be considered extreme and outrageous? Perceptive student points, exactly right. Now, it could be argued though that the IID came from this fact. She also sprayed air freshener on the dogs through the fence, and unfortunately, two of the dogs died. That could be extreme and outrageous. Extreme in that someone she shouldn't have done that in the first place. I think that's she should have maybe even contacted Ken again concerning the dog problem. That's making it extreme. Outrageous is conduct outside the bounds of civilized society or outside the bounds of decency. This is definitely not decent. This is definitely outside the bounds of civilized behavior. Spraying dogs with air freshener uh, on the dogs through the fence, and because not only did two of the dogs die as a result, but this is something that is just not 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 good, not good at all. Okay, now so I would say yeah, intentional infliction. Now did she intend to cause harm to the dog? See that there's another thing on that. That could be argued in the yes. Why? Because she sprayed the water with the intent to get the dogs back and be quiet. So you could say that she also sprayed the air freshener on the dogs through the fence, maybe with the same intent to get them back and to be quiet. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on IID, the health department. Right. She should have sought the health department rather than you taking the situation into her own hands. I know she's going to counter argue this. She might argue that when she went to Ken to complain, or I should this, when Marilyn's complaints to Ken failed to resolve the matters. What does that say? She already went to Ken and explained the matter to Ken, and that didn't work. Well, that shouldn't be where the story ends. Marilyn should have gone, like you said, to the health department and tried to sort things out. And maybe the health department could have talked to Ken. That's exactly right. And then this is exactly what the facts go into. She independently tried several measures to create a buffer zone at the end of Ken's property that abuts her land. This goes to another issue that she might raise. I believe it's in it's right down here. It's the defense of property. See, here's the thing. Was the water that she used to get the dogs to back up, would that be considered reasonable? Yeah, I think you know what though I'm gonna say that it's not very kind at all, and I think she should have, like you pointed out, contacted the health department. So that's a no-no. The other big no-no is doing the spraying of the air freshener Right down here, spraying the air freshener at the dogs through the fence, and unfortunately, two of the dogs died as a result. Yeah, exactly. See, you could argue that the reasonable use of force through defending her property. Remember, reasonable use of force to defend property is allowed. Okay, but remember, is spraying the water to get the dogs to back up and be quiet, is that the only thing that she's using the water for? So we're going to come down here and use the additional fact here. She also used the water to move the piles of excrement away from the fence. So in the one of the three instances, I think she could use the water to remove the excrement away from the fence, but I just don't. I'm just not of the belief that even spraying the dogs to get the dogs to back up and be quiet is reasonable. Also, definitely not reasonable is using the air freshener through the fence, and unfortunately, two of the dogs died. So we got, yeah, there's the defense of property that could have three areas that she would be bringing up. Only one of them would have any right. Exactly, one of them would be reasonable. Now down here, we want to make sure too. I know we're skipping around, and I do apologize for that, but this is an excellent lesson to do that on. The conversion. Remember now, it's not just trespass to chattel. We have the trespass to chattel, a substantial interference with the possessory interest in the plaintiff's property. When Marilyn sprayed the dogs from her hose to get the dogs to back up and be quiet, she was interfering with Ken's possessory interest in his what? Dogs. Okay. Now, was that did she intend to do that? Absolutely. Did it cause that? Did it number one, was it but for test analysis? Yes. Was it foreseeable? Yes. Was there damages? Well, oh, okay. All right. Sorry about that pause. Okay, so we got to go back to our interference with chattel here. Was Marilyn spraying the dogs with the water an interference with Ken's possessory interest in his dogs? Absolutely yes. Was Marilyn spraying the air freshener on the dogs through the fence, and unfortunately two of the dogs died as a result? Also an interference with Ken's possessory interest with a separate trespass to chattel's argument? Yes. The spraying of the air freshener on the dogs through the fence, and unfortunately two of the dogs died as a result, rises to the level of conversion. Why? Because this interference is a substantial dominion and control over Ken's property, his dogs, so much so that that there would be a forced sale for the fair market value at the time of the conversion. In other words, the fair market value of the two dogs that died as a result. And so you could argue trespass to chattel for the water through from the use of the water to get the dogs to back up and be quiet. You could also argue trespass to chattel for the spraying of the air freshener on the dogs through the fence, and argue that there's a conversion for the spraying of the air freshener on the dogs through the fence because two of the dogs died as a result, which is the conversion of the two dogs. The fair market could recover technically the fair market value for the two dogs that died as a result. Now the other thing is, what about her use of the water stream to move the piles of excrement away from the fence? What would that be? That would be a trespass to what? Land. Why? Because she's causing something to enter the land of Ken. In other words, there's an entry on the land of another without consent or privilege. Ken did not consent to this, and Marilyn did not have privilege to move the piles of excrement away from the fence. Although she might argue that, I don't think it will be reasonable. Absolutely, land, exactly. Oh yeah, to the land of another. Thank you. The real property land of another. Thank you. Now, at right here too, coming up the I think we've tackled all this. Oh, again, then we want to talk about one other thing as well under the Ken v. Maryland, and we'll come back up and talk about Maryland v. Ken here in a minute. is self-help abatement of nuisance, okay? When she came to Ken and said to Ken, or here's how it was said, that when Marilyn's complaints to Ken failed to resolve the matters, what would that require Marilyn to do? Come onto the land of Ken to resolve the what? The nuisance. So technically, she's entering Ken's land with consent or privilege to resolve to self-help her situation concerning the problems that she's having with Ken's smell, the dog barking, and such. And can she do that? Absolutely. That would be the defense of entry to abate a nuisance or self-help abatement of nuisance. Same thing. Now back up to the Maryland v. Ken situation. We have right here the defense of coming to the nuisance. After we've established nuisance through private nuisance, possibly public nuisance, if we can establish that her uh, her harm is different in kind than that suffered by the community, it's possible that her harm is different kind than suffered by the community if it can be established that although Ken will argue in counter argument that in time since Ken built his facility, the suburbs expanded outwards toward his property. So maybe there's more of people that are finding the smell noxious, finding the noise intolerable. Maybe there's more, which means maybe Marilyn's harm that she's feeling, the problems that she's having, is not different in kind than that's in her community. It's possible. That might be Ken's counter argument. Now, down here under right here, the coming to the nuisance. Where's that going to be? Remember, it's not an official defense. It's actually an argument, a compelling argument. That's right. Her issues with her cats. Exactly right. Right here, the coming to the nuisance was Ken. Right here, I want to make okay. She decided to get in here in time. So we know that Ken's been there for some time because the facts say that in time since Ken built his facility, the suburbs expanded outwards toward his property. Now, Marilyn found a perfect lot next to Ken's property, large enough for her cats to roam, and built her house there. Now remember, this is an argument that Ken could bring against Marilyn, saying that I was here before. You're moving to the nuisance. In other words, you in essence assumed the risk that they're because of picking the property where you did and how you picked the property, and for what purposes you picked the property. You technically knew when you bought the property next to my dog facility, which has been there for possibly some time, that number one, you might encounter smells that would be noxious because of it being a dog facility, a dog breeding facility. Number two, you might encounter noise that would be considered intolerable. Number three, if you bring cats, next to the area, you specifically pick out this plot of land large enough for cats to roam and building a house there specifically with special features for cats, such as catwalks near the ceilings, that the cats might develop nervous disorders due to the constant barking of the dogs. Now that's Ken's argument. Now remember, Maryland's going to say that is not a full defense. It's more of a compelling argument. Yeah, it's more things that the court considers in making their determination. Right? How did she not know the dogs were there? Exactly. How would she not know that dogs were there? There's a dog breeding facility right there when she's picking out the perfect lot next to Ken's property. How would she not know? That's Ken's argument. She would say, well, even though she picked out a lot next to Ken's property, she was picking it out specifically so that her cats would not be would not have the consistent barking of Ken's dogs. That it wasn't just barking on and off, it was consistent barking. And that's maybe her best argument. Now, yeah, that's exactly right. And so when when we go through our analysis, and I'm glad you're staying with me and walking with me through these facts, because we're developing basically not only issue recognition but argument recognition as well. When we start to see how these facts fit, they fit in these nice little cubbies in our argument. Okay, and these are great tools, a great tool with which we can start developing really rich argument, and for both sides, of course, for Ken's argument that we've been talking about, and for Maryland's side of the same argument as well. Now, the dog facility was not new exactly. It had been there for quite some time. That's why coming to the nuisance is possibly a strong consideration that Ken's going to bring to the attention of the court. Now, um, yes, that's exactly right. Well, I think right now, probably for the first part of this, I actually, you know what, I'm going to consider this complete, even though we haven't really worked through all the analysis. We've talked through the analysis because I wanted to walk you through some of the excellent arguments that are presented in our facts here, and being able to look at these issues from both sides, looking at all the issues in an efficient time, and being aware that not only are we issue spotting, in essence, we're argument spotting as well from these facts. When we go through our second read, we're finding a nice little pocket or cubby for these supporting facts. What our first read, or maybe even second read, saw as foundational facts, we see that these are actually supports for arguments for Ken, arguments for Maryland. So with that, I'm going to say adieu. I thank you so much for tuning in. I wanted to put a shout out for Chess Cruncher TV, go Chess Cruncher, and I also want to put a shout out for, oh yes, exactly, having a fantastic plan of attack. It's a must, absolutely. Going into these questions with an understanding that not only are we looking for the issues, but we're looking for facts that are going to help support elements of our issue. And it's the weaving of those two together that makes for a great argument for maybe a position and against a position. Like, so A will argue and B will counter argue. Exactly. Very well done. So shout out to Chess Cruncher TV, go Chess Cruncher, and a shout out to my book, Amazon Kindle, Battling the Big Bad Baby Bar. Thank you so much, and best of luck on the bar exam.